and welcome to this briefing on Prime Minister's forthcoming visit to the African continent. As you know, from the 7th to the 11th of July, the Prime Minister will be visiting Mozambique, South Africa, Kenya, and Tanzania. To brief you on this very important visit, I have with me Secretary Economic Relations, Sri Amar Sinha, and Joint Secretary E&SA, that is Eastern and Southern Africa, Dr. Neena Malhotra. Secretary ER will give you a broad opening statement, which will cover all the bases insofar as the major engagements of Prime Minister are concerned, the outcomes likely to be expected from these visits, and thereafter the floor will be open to questions. With that, I'll invite Secretary ER to make his opening statement.
Well, good evening. He has already announced Prime Minister's visit. In fact, it's a four-country visit, starting with on 7th in Mozambique. This, as you would have noticed, is actually the third segment of the high-level visits that were planned to Africa as a follow-up of IAFS. The first, of course, was Vice President from 30th of May to 5th of June to Morocco and Tunisia, followed by our own President going to Ghana, Ivory Coast, and Namibia from 12th to 18th of June. So in the first half of this year, this is the third segment, which covers 4 countries in 5 days. Just to give you an overview, because the question you would ask is why these countries? Well, important things to note is that this is the first visit by our Prime Minister to the African mainland. All these visits are happening after a long, long gap. In fact, to Mozambique after 34 years. Mrs. Gandhi was the last to visit. Kenya after 35 years. Even South Africa after 10 years. Tanzania was something that Prime Minister Manmohan Singh visited in 2011. Yes, so that's a 5-year gap. All these 4 countries, if you look at the map, are our maritime neighbors across the Indian Ocean. They share the coast. These are all of them are gateways to the mainland, number of landlocked countries which are also our important partners. So basically we Indian exports and traders also rely on the ports in these countries, whether it is Mombasa, Beira, or further down in South Africa. All these 3, of course, varying degrees, but we have sizable diaspora in all these 3 countries. Kenya, northmost, has 80,000. Tanzania has 50,000, Mozambique has 20,000, and of course, South Africa, as you know, is more than 1 million. So our focus of these visits would be, I'll just give you a broad picture, would basically is focusing on energy. And I say energy because Mozambique is actually will be the 3rd largest exporter of natural gas after Qatar and Australia. Then food security, because these countries are already exporting large amounts of food, both ways. Both our investors have invested in, say, for example, Kenya, growing flowers and tulips, which they're catering to world markets. But also we are importing large numbers of food items for India, particularly pulses. They are a major source of pulses, both arhar, tur, and moong dal, which grows in these regions. Diaspora, which I've already mentioned. So actually there will be 2 major engagements. Of course, he's meeting the diaspora in all the 4 countries, but those are more interactions, but both in Johannesburg, as in Kenya, he would be addressing them also in a large format because the response was so overwhelming that we had over 10,000 and 15,000 registrations in a day, people who wanted to come and listen to him. So we had to organize a much bigger event in an indoor stadium, etc. Then, of course, the maritime dimension, as I said, and that dictates also the choice of these countries, is very, very important. They are all members of the IORA. So we are interested in blue economy in all its connotation, maritime security. Then, of course, these countries are also members of the International Solar Alliance, which is our initiative. So we will be trying to see how we can synergize their support and what else we can do in actually assisting or working with these countries in developing solar energy for their use. So we are looking at really consolidating the gains that we have made at the IAFS And also, and that is why these visits were planned this year. And you would note that I said that this was the first half of the year. So we don't yet have the full calendar for the second half. So you wouldn't be surprised that some more visits would come up, both outgoing and actually several incoming visits also that are being looked at. Let me give you a quick rundown of what he would do in each country. Mozambique, he reaches, of course, 7th morning. It is perhaps in a sense is the shortest period, but he's there 12 hours, and it's a packed program. You arrival at 7, then of course official meetings which all start at 10, and then it's back-to-back meetings, official meetings, MOUs, press interaction, then a couple of signing of MOUs, community event, are basically more or less common in all the 4 countries. Then, of course, each country has a few specific events which are very unique to those countries, which I'll come to you later. You would recall that Mozambique, of course, President Nyusi, who will be the host, was here in August of last year. He couldn't come back for the IAFS summit, but his Prime Minister had attended. Prime Minister would also be meeting the President of the National Assembly there, which is part of the drill for any state visit. So he will be going there also to the Parliament. Another important thing about Mozambique is if you look at Mozambique, though it's a small country, but we have been engaged with Mozambique right from its time of independence, with all these countries because of our colonial past. But Mozambique is also the destination for nearly a quarter of the Indian investments in Africa, nearly $8 billion. And this involves a range of major PSUs. Some of these investments made by ICVL, this is a special purpose vehicle which was created, has invested in coal mining, which includes SAIL and MDC, etc. This happened in October 2014. But the others, like SR, Tata Power, ONGC, these have been present in Mozambique, and they have big stakes there. And we have been actually increasing our stakes. We also hope to sign an MOU on government-to-government purchase of pulses from Mozambique for India, which is more or less in the sort of very final stages of decision-making, and we are very hopeful that it will come through. This Mozambique also represents, though it's a small country with a population of 27 million, but our trade, if you look at, really jumped. It went up nearly 5-fold in the last 5 years. Of course, last year it has taken a small hit, basically because energy prices came down. So, but still it's hovering around $1.5 to $2 billion. We are also hoping to sign agreements or MOUs on civil aviation cooperation, that is bilateral air services agreement, because that is one gap that we see, that while we have very good relations with African countries, none of the Indian airlines have any direct connectivity with Africa, any of these. So we are trying to see that, and of course I think the government would redress this situation slowly. We have been partners, a strong development partner for all these countries. And of course our lines of credit have been playing a very important role. Last October we have really increased the level to $10 billion. So we are looking at new projects, but Mozambique, for example, we have already provided assistance of over $600 million, $640 million, which includes solar assembly plant, rural electrification, drinking water supply, and a technology development center. Mozambique particularly has been very supportive of India's membership of the expanded UN Security Council. Of course, it's an important member of ISA and IOR, as I already mentioned, and it's a regular participant in our Indian Ocean Naval Symposiums. Then coming to the next stop would be South Africa. South Africa, the program is slightly more complex because it involves 3 cities. 2, of course, are twin cities. That is the seat of the government in Pretoria, as well as Johannesburg, which is all on earth, where we have, of course, the official meetings, MOUs, then a business meet. We have actually a 5-year-old CEOs forum, which will be meeting, which has the top 20 CEOs from India and their counterparts from Africa. They would be meeting, and the leaders would be addressing an enlarged business meet. South Africa, of course, traditionally has seen a huge presence of Indian companies. Over 150 Indian companies are invested there. Investments are around $3 or $4 billion, right? And similarly, a large number of South African companies have invested in India. Of course, South Africa is also partner in all our multilateral organizations that you know of, IBSA, BRICS. They have been very supportive of India in the NSG. Last NSG, of course, you may have read some reports to the contrary, but let me tell you, before you ask me the question, that they have actually been quite supportive. Second day there, of course, PM would go to Durban, which is both where Mahatma Gandhi experimented with truth and mastered his satyagraha, etc. So we are doing two elements which are connected with Mahatma Gandhi. One is, of course, the historic train journey from Durban to Pietermaritzburg, but we are cutting short. We are doing at the last 15 kilometers up to Pietermaritzburg station. Then he will also be visiting the Phoenix ashram there. Then most likely the mayor or somebody wants to have a civic sort of a reception where he'll call the community and important ANC leaders who will meet him there. And he will address the community. And we hope to leave Durban by evening of 8th to be in Tanzania. 8th? 9th we are leaving. No, 7th is...
7th night we reach.
Correct, Saturday. So Sunday we are reaching in Tanzania. So, it's really every hour there is a new program. So you'll have to carefully go through this. So we of course, we are very grateful. Tanzania actually accepted a visit, an official visit on a Sunday, which is, of course, a great gesture because normally nobody accepts a state visit on a Sunday. And Tanzania was not only happy, but in fact, they were first off the mark in terms of they immediately said that they would want, definitely, they would not want Indian Prime Minister to just fly over them between Durban to Nairobi. So we have decided that we'll stop there, and the Sunday would be spent whole day there and the same elements, the official parts. I can tell you what else he is doing there besides the official engagements. He is meeting the Indian community. As you know, in part of our development partnership, we have this program called Training of Solar Mamas. Solar Mamas are these grandmothers from villages who are brought by Barefoot College. So he will also be meeting a group of 40 or so solar mamas from different parts of Africa, which Barefoot College has sort of trained. We are also actually funding setting up of one of the Barefoot College centers in Tanzania. So that we thought was a good opportunity for PM to actually see, because this connects with our new Solar Alliance, that we already have a cadre of well-trained people, even in the village level, who are solar technicians who have already been electrifying villages. So this will actually sort of plugs in very well with the overall initiative on Solar Alliance. Outcomes, I'm not announcing the exact MOUs and various LOCs that we will sign. No, I'll come to Kenya. But no, in all these countries, we are signing MOUs. We are signing some lines of credit also. But I said I'll leave that part of the story as it evolves. Otherwise, you will not have very much to write on it if I tell you everything. Kenya, of course, this is a visit after, 35 years? Last visit was Mrs. Gandhi, 82. 81. That was 1 year before I joined service. That is when the last visit took place. So, it's significant, a huge community there, and mainly these were old traders from Kutch. And in fact, today I was reading, there's a new book which has come out, Globalization Before Its Time, a history of Kutchis who traveled to all these Eastern African countries. So there's strong connection. Another very interesting fact about Mozambique is that Mozambique was ruled by the Portuguese from Goa for nearly 250 years before the headquarters for the governance moved to Lisbon. So from 1505 to nearly 1752 or something, they were actually being governed from their presence in Goa across the ocean. See, Kenya has not only the Indian presence in terms of the old diaspora, but most of our major companies, and we'll be very happy to know that the biggest insurance company, for example, is a consortium of all our PSUs, which includes National Insurance, then United India Insurance, GIC. So they are a huge presence there. 2-3 of our banks have multiple branches in Kenya. Our trade, of course, right now is nearly $3.5 billion. And Kenya, till last year, was one of the unique countries which India was the #1 trading partner. In fact, our exports to Kenya were larger than any other country. We have lost some share of it this year, but still we are #2. So we have very healthy trade relations, of course, trouble-free political relations with all these countries. Prime Minister, of course, reaches, and we have timed it that on 10th of July, he will reach Nairobi. And the first event would be that evening, and it's 10th of July is a Sunday, I think. So we're using this Sunday because Kenya is a big, bustling city, so we thought that we will do the community event on 10th July evening itself. And then 11th would be all the official engagements. And of course, as part of every state visit, there are 2 or 3 important elements that they also have, which is first, visit to the UN headquarters. And this is, as you know, this is a unique that UNEP and the UN is headquartered there, and it's the first center outside in any developing country. So it's mandatory. Plus, he's going to address the students at the University of Nairobi, which, interestingly, it was an institute which was set up by a group of Indians. In a sense, the Indian society there had given the initial seed funding. That's why the original building is called Mahatma Gandhi Center. There is a statue that they had set up, so PM would be paying respects there also. He'll be planting a sapling at the Nairobi. And Nairobi University on 21st of June actually saw a turnout of over 7,000 yoga enthusiasts. It's a huge number in Nairobi. Similarly, in Tanzania, 3,000 people. So all these countries, of course, they have been supporting all our resolutions, whether it was UN Day or making October 2 as the International Day for Non-Violence, etc. And all of them, of course, while they are bound by the Ezulvuni consensus, but they all share the view in terms of democratizing and making the international organizations more sort of representative. We have, of course, few LOCs to sign here also, some very good projects. Tanzania, actually, the major water supply to the city is ready. It is ready for inauguration anytime, but of course, we are not inaugurating it. PM will only mention, because this was an LOC which just is getting completed. So by end of this month, it will be ready for a formal inauguration. So we are looking at expanding it substantially because this has been such a successful model that they want to replicate this water supply in 17 different cities and towns, abundant water resources. In Kenya, PM would also be announcing, because we are holding a major Festival of India later this year. He would be mentioning about that. Kenya, we are looking at energizing our sports. There's a great interest there. Of course, Kenyans are in the ICC playing cricket, but they would like to learn cricket and hockey. So we told them that we'd like to learn long-distance running, where they are absolutely world beaters. Kenya, India is important for them because we're the 3rd largest contributor of inbound tourism for Kenyans. So we are looking at how we could improve that with more air direct connectivity, visa facilitation. I think they have visa on arrival also for Indians. They are trying to look at this. Plus, we will be perhaps establishing an India chair at the University of Nairobi, And this will basically be a professor of economics. They wanted an Indian economic professor, which will be announcing. So these are the major broad outlines of the program. In Durban, I think there is also a proposal to start a digital exhibition on Mahatma Gandhi, a permanent interactive digital exhibition at the Constitution Hall, which he will be visiting, where he will also interact with all the associates and leaders of Mandela Foundation. In Johannesburg. So these are the broad elements of the program. And if you have questions, I'll be very happy to.
I think that has been a really very broad presentation. I think it has covered all the major points of Prime Minister's visit, but if you still have any questions.
Amar, our relations with Africa have been booming lately. To what extent would you give the credit to the substantial Indian diaspora in that continent, number one? And will Esulwini consensus figure in some form or the other in the Prime Minister's talks with the heads of state in those respective countries? And is the Esulwini consensus as an obstruction or a helpful thing for the UN Security Council expansion? Thanks.
UN Security Council expansion will be discussed in all the 4 countries, and we don't see too much of a difference. Esulwini consensus really only talks of 2 representatives from Africa, which the African countries have to decide. And the only difference is because they are insisting that there should be a veto for these members right from the beginning, while the G4 had said, well, we can look at this. So, no, I would say that this support is more than just a mere abstraction. This is a concrete support. Ultimately, it's for the African Union and African nations to decide who their 2 representatives would be. We are not going to suggest to them. So our objectives are same. And I said the only difference is on that veto, but that is something that I guess we will, once these negotiations move at the UN, it's not something that we can't resolve sitting with them and talking to them. And yes, the diaspora, as we have said, you see the focus on Africa has, as I said, has multiple dimensions. Diaspora, of course, remains the most important. In every speech that PM or EM says, that they say that we sort of really value their contribution in bringing and keeping our relations warm and bringing the countries closer. But that decision that they will, that we will go or IAFS, I don't think was really driven by diaspora consideration alone.
Vijay?
Yeah. Sir, you say that the visits are after 34 years, 35 years, no? I mean, at the level of the Prime Minister, you see. So do you think that we have neglected Africa for a very long time on a high level visits? Now, 3 visits have already taken place. You have just mentioned about it, you see. But what do you think about, is being said that the Chinese have gone deep actually in Africa and India is like behind. What is your take on this as a ER?
I wouldn't say neglect. That's too strong a word to use. But yes, it would appear. There were priorities. But the fact that we are going out doesn't mean that there have been no contact with them. In fact, from all these countries, perhaps with the exception of Kenya, we have had regular visits. With South Africa, of course, we meet practically twice a year at G20, at BRICS, etc. So it's not that the leadership has not met. I have a very poetic way of describing it. I don't know whether you'll agree with it. These are like the 2 banks of a river, which are apart, but they never separate. They always continue together. So we are trying to bridge that. China, you see, Africa is a huge continent. It has tremendous requirements for development assistance, infrastructure building. So we don't see a contradiction there. In fact, the Western countries are also huge donors there in all these countries. So I guess everybody, if we can chip in to assist them, it is good. And but if you see in terms of competition, that are we there for in a scramble for minerals or resources? No, I don't think we are in that race. And I don't think in the long term that sort of a relationship pays also.
सर, आपने मोजाम्बिक का जिक्र किया. अभी एक फूड मिनिस्ट्री का एक डेलीगेशन भी गया था मोजाम्बिक, और वहाँ से एक प्रपोजल है कि बहुत अगर लगातार आप दालों का आयात कर रहे हैं तो वहाँ पे आपको लैंड मिल सकता है। इस बात को देखने के लिए वहाँ पे एक सेक्रेटरी लेवल का डेलीगेशन भी गया हुआ था। आपको लगता है कि प्रधानमंत्री की इस यात्रा के दौरान इस बात को और आगे बढ़ाया जा सकता है?
जी, जो मैंने अभी समझाया था कि हम लोग वहाँ पे एमओयू साइन करेंगे, वो शायद एमओयू दाल के इंपोर्ट पे हो रहा है, लैंड के लीज पे नहीं हो रहा है। ये लैंड लीजिंग का जो मुद्दा है, ये थोड़ा सा कंट्रोवर्शियल भी हो जाता है। अभी आपने शायद ऑक्सफैम का रिपोर्ट भी देखा होगा कि हाउ पीपल हैव बीन डिस्प्लेसिंग ट्रेडिशनल फार्मर्स एक्सेट्रा। सो वी आर ट्राइंग टू लुक एट अ विन विन सोल्यूशन कि कैन वी वर्क थ्रू agents, a bit like our cooperatives or like Anand Dairy, whether we can create a network of farmers whom we assist with agricultural extension, better seeds, better farming practices, and there are people who could collect their produce and we can get it through a government agency. That's rather than long-term lease of land, you know, because that is a political and an emotive issue. So we will have to carefully. So ultimately, वो जो कहते हैं कि आपको तो आम खाने से मतलब है, आम के पेड़ आपके हो या नहीं, so जी. Actually, अभी quantity कल तक पता चल जाएगा, but I can tell you कि it's a 5-10 years phasing. It starts with 100,000 tons. But it's a phased, because as we said, we want to create a network of farmers, and more they join, this will go up. So we have got a sliding scale of imports. And of course, that would also depend on what you need. But there is a minimum guaranteed offtake that will be built into the MOU, so that those farmers have the certainty that when they go into producing arhar or moong, they would be able to sell it. And I think creatively, the food ministry is also linking it to the minimum support price here, so that the African farmers don't feel that they are being sort of shortchanged.
Manish Chand.
Sir, expanding strategic partnership with Africa was identified as one of the focus areas of the IFS3. Now, with all these countries, especially Eastern Africa, Kenya, there has been a proliferation of terror syndicates, terror groups. Extremism is rising. Are we looking at concrete initiatives in the area of counter-terror cooperation and maritime cooperation?
My answer is yes to both. Actually, if you look at the terror map, it is basically Kenya, northern Kenya, which has got most affected. Tanzania, Mozambique are relatively safer. South Africa is safe. But of course, as President told them, even when he went to Namibia, no country is really safe. And only earlier this month, 2 months ago, we had the first meeting of our joint working group on counter-terror with Kenya, with Tanzania. But yes, all these countries, and I went to Tanzania and Kenya in preparation 2 weeks ago. So both maritime cooperation, a general defense cooperation in terms of capacity building, cooperating in intelligence sharing and counter-terrorism, and also equipping themselves, and perhaps even using the lines of credit to acquire equipment from India. These were sort of issues that my interlocutors raised with me.
Can you share with us details of the energy cooperation that you have already with these 4 countries? And what could be on the anvil?
See, in their gas field, ONGC has invested nearly $5 billion in Mozambique. In Mozambique, we also have actually ICVL, which was formed with SAIL and NMDC, etc. We bought over the coal mines of Rio Tinto 2 years ago. I must say that the actual production has happened in small amounts, basically because by the time we got into acquiring these assets, the global commodity prices have fallen down. But we are staying the course. We will maintain these assets, and we are hoping that as the recovery and the gas prices and oil prices rise, our imports will continue. With South Africa, we don't have too much in oil and gas. But we are trying to engage all these countries in solar energy. But of course, solar energy is basically our initiative, and I don't think we can really import that electricity, but it's part of the commitment of the developing world, who have always been accused that you guys are free riders. So we are trying to work with these countries to do whatever we can to mitigate the climate change effects.
South Africa also, I think, at one time you were interested in the mining technology, in the deep bed mining and things.
Yes, of course. South Africa, we are deeply interested in a number of the technologies they have. They're fairly two things where they have specialized is, of course, is coal gasification, as well as deep mining. So these are areas we already have some cooperation. We would like to intensify this. Their defense industry is very well developed, and there are a number of companies, and we feel that the new opening in the FDI in defense, where even on a case-by-case basis, government will allow 100%, we are quite interested in acquiring or inviting some of these companies to come and have a relook in India. I know that there will be one or two private MOUs signed in South Africa on joint production, so in defense.
Akhilesh?
Sir, I am from Rajya Sabha TV, and recently a standing committee has come up with a report that Prime Minister is going and he is announcing, but the budget is not adequate to fulfill those announcements. And African ambassadors complain that in case of LOC, we are getting so much delay. Has there been any improvement on these two fronts?
Well, yes, we were there when the standing committee discussed our budget. That is a problem, but we have been assured that as we spend, you see, because budget allocation happens in 2 or 3 stages in our country, we all know in the financial year. There's an amount given right in the beginning, then there's a revised estimates, and then there are final estimates where they make. So we don't think that the doors have closed. Since they have raised, we have raised, Prime Minister is aware, Finance Minister is aware, so I have reasons that depending on how much we can disburse or spend and how much our partner countries can absorb, these resources would be made available, because these are cabinet decisions and I don't think there will be any problem in that. In the LOCs, delays, well, I wouldn't like to play a blame game why the delays happen, but the fact is that certain procedures have to be followed. There are certain norms by which these LOCs are disbursed. Then after the in-principle decisions, there is a very detailed sort of procedure for floating tenders, for getting the right contractors, then mobilization from here, then implementing. And most of these projects, which are developmental projects, are not being developed in the capital cities. These are really out in a deep inside the country. So yes, there are problems of infrastructure, logistics, etc. But I don't think these are held up because of sort of bureaucratic delays on our part. And of course, detailed project report, ultimately the success of any project is how well you go in terms of having the detailed project report done. Because that estimates the cost, that looks at all the difficulties, anticipates where you can go wrong. So those are the things that we are streamlining. After IAFS, as you know, we did have a new guidelines. Now, guidelines did 2 things. It first made the terms and conditions much more beneficial, both in terms of the repayment, the moratorium, as well as the interest rate. Because IMF says that these LDCs in developing countries with low income need to, when they have assistance of this kind, there should be a minimum amount of grant element in it, which is around over 30%. So we had to rework our own interest rates, and we did create a new matrix. So that, I think, the host governments have to understand. And I think we had detailed presentations, and they have understood. Then along with it came also certain elements where we would like good, well-established, competent Indian companies to participate more. So to this effect, of course, we ourselves, MEA and EXIM, did a round of 6 national-level seminars in different cities, trying to tell them that this is the new LOC, this is an opportunity for good Indian companies to participate and utilize. So these things are happening, and of course, the LOC, we respond to requests. So if we get requests, and we have got requests from Tanzania, from Kenya, and we have all taken positive decisions on those.
Sir, my question is the MEA directly organizing the programs with the Indian community in South Africa and Kenya? Because you mentioned that the applicants were, I mean, the number of people queuing up for registration were so many that you had to arrange for an indoor stadium. So, unlike in Europe or in the West, where the local Indian organizations had, that is one. And a related thing, could you just give us some details of the time, the venue, the date of these programs in Joburg and Nairobi both?
Joburg is 8th around 6 p.m. Local time. No, local time. I'm talking of local time. Around 6 p.m. In Kenya, it is 7 p.m. Nairobi time. Soon after PM's arrival, PM arrives around 6 p.m. He goes to hotel, goes there. On the question, who's organizing this? Yes, it's the local communities and associations which are organizing these events. Of course, the mission is always there to coordinate. But no, these very large sort of events, it becomes difficult for the mission to organize. So they take help of the local. And both these places, committees have been formed of community leaders who are actively participating with the mission.
Sir, anything on diamond and gold? Are we looking at some kind of agreements there, or some procurements?
Not in this visit. There's nothing specific.
Aronim.
Can you please give some details of the population, Indian diaspora population in South Africa, please?
0.2 million, I think, right?
1.2 million is, of course, a rough estimate. And when we say this, this is the Indian origin population.
Correct.
Who are all sort of citizens of South Africa. Then their estimates are that 15 to 20,000 Indian nationals and professionals who are there, who are the new immigrants and who are mainly concentrated around Johannesburg area, because that's where the big companies are.
Durban is the largest Indian city outside India, as you know, 800,000 Indians there. Indian people of Indian origin, rather. Okay, Kalol.
So there was a terror attack in Kenya, the Westgate Mall attack. Keeping that in mind, do you think the security corporations that we're planning will also secure the security of the diaspora members across Africa throughout these visits that you're organizing? I've been saying that will these visits that you're organizing, these high-level visits, will they also ensure security of the Indian diaspora from terror? In some way.
It's a tough question. You are basically saying that will government of India assure the security of Kenyans and Tanzanians living in their own country?
No, Indians. No, I'm saying the Westgate Mall had Indians who were affected in that terror strike. So
correct, but
keeping that
diaspora. Yeah. Well, it's the responsibility of the host government to secure their own citizens. Like we would secure anybody here, whether he is an Indian national or a foreigner. I guess it is for the Kenyan government to secure their citizens, but the fact that we'll be talking to them and our cooperation focuses on both sensitizing them, the need for greater cooperation, a need for exchange of information. Yes, this would enable them to secure their own citizens. I would say that. But the other part, I don't know what else India could do to secure Kenyan of Indian origin living in Kenya.
Okay, this concludes the press conference. Thank you all.